Today we're going to start by refreshing our fundamental skills and using a little knife skills. Here I have our clean cutting board, which has been secured on our table with a damp towel to keep it from moving around. I'm also going to be cutting up an onion, which I've already sliced in half. And as a refresher, we know we're going to cut our onion vertically, then horizontally, and chop it across. This will give us nice even onion chops. It's just a rough chop, so there's no need to be perfect. This isn't like we're using it for plating. All right? You want to make sure that your root bulb is intact on your onion so that this will keep it together. Okay? Finally, we're going to finish up by mincing some garlic and some ginger and adding in our aromatics so that later when we saute, they will all be ready. All of this is included in what we call mise en place. Okay, so we've gotten our onion chopped down. We're going to add it here to our container. And then I'm going to move on to my garlic. Now again, if you remember from last week's lesson, or a couple of weeks ago rather, we took the garlic, the whole garlic clove here, placed it into a mason jar, and shook it up until all of the cloves came out. Now that my cloves have already been freshly prepared, I can go ahead and take the flat end of my knife, sit it on top of my clove, and using the ball of my wrist, I can smash it. This will allow me to get off any excess skin that didn't come off and allow me to go ahead and begin chopping. I have a garbage bowl off to the side where I'm putting all of my scraps. Okay? Just going to continue to smashing most of this garlic here so that we're ready to go. And then I'm just going to mince it up on my board, and I'm going to add it in with my onions that I have off to the side. A trick with ginger when we get to that stage is you can use the back of your spoon to scrape your ginger off. This will remove all of the skin from your ginger. It's a very easy way to peel it. You want to keep your garlic together. Always, as it gets away from you, bringing it back to center and chopping it some more. Making sure that you keep your knife free of large pieces that are sticking to it. Okay? The natural juices within the garlic will allow it to stick. It is very high in moisture, and it has a lot of juices in it that will stick to your knife. So you just want to mince it down. You want to get it chopped up very well. Okay, so as you see, I've got mine down pretty finely minced here. And you notice I used quite a few pieces of garlic clove. And I usually use a good amount because I'm trying to make sure, as opposed to saying in a recipe how many cloves I use, I'm going to tell you the measurement because different cloves are different sizes, as we talked about before. If I'm going to measure this, this should give me about 3 tablespoons of minced garlic. Okay? Now if I wanted to continue chopping a little bit more, I could get about 4 tablespoons. But we're going to start off with 3, and then if I need that extra tablespoon that I mentioned earlier to you, I can go ahead and chop that and add that later. Okay, so as you can see, I've quickly peeled that ginger up for me. I'm going to just come here, slice up some pieces off of this piece of ginger that's been peeled. Making sure to always keep your fingers behind the blade of your knife and move them back as you come in so that you don't cut off your fingers, okay? Then I'm going to come back here, come crosswise. And again. Now, because ginger is a root, and It's very fibrous, and it's gonna take a little bit. It's not gonna be as easy to cut down. There's not as much water in it. It's very fibrous, and so you're really gonna have to take your time and chop it. Remember to keep everything pulled together neatly. Will make it much easier as you want to mince it down, using the friction of the larger pieces against the smaller ones. All right. So I've got my ginger all minced up here, and it's ready to go. So I'm going to add this to my onion mixture, also with my garlic, because as you know, we are going to saute all of these aromatics together in order to increase the flavor in our stew. So that quarter of ginger was exactly 3 tablespoons. So I'll go ahead, and now I've completed all of my chopping. In advance, I've already pre-cut up our in advance, we have already pre-cut up our dices of our sweet potatoes, which will go in here. And we have seasoned our chicken. We have seasoned our chicken with Burberry spice blend, which is an African spice blend, using sumac and cumin and paprika and a lot of very rich fragrant colors. At this point, we're going to go ahead and take our chicken, and we are going to sear it and brown it off in our brazier. This will give you a nice color on your chicken, and then we'll remove it from our skillet and then saute in our aromatics. Okay, we've gotten our brazier hot, and so remember, for this particular recipe, unlike the recipe we made yesterday, we don't want our pan smoking hot. We just want it hot. So we're going to add a couple of tablespoons of olive oil into the bottom of the pan to coat the pan, because we're going to add our chicken directly in here. So I'm just going to eyeball our olive oil so that makes sure that there's enough in here. When you go to put your chicken in the pan, you're going to use tongs. We want to make sure that we're starting skin side down, because we want that nice sear on our skin. That's the sound you're looking for. Alright, so you know your chicken is ready to turn when it easily releases from the pan. So if you can see here, we have a nice brown color on the outside of our skin. If you give your chicken a little tug and it doesn't let go, it's not yet ready to flip over, okay? roasting your chicken does two things. One, it gives your chicken color, but it also, in turn, releases a lot of the fat that's within the skin of your chicken. And those flavors begin to incorporate into the oil which is in your pan. Once we browned off all of our chicken, we're going to remove it from our brazier, and then we're going to add in our aromatics. Okay, being careful not to burn our chicken, we're ready to remove our chicken from our pan. So I have a sheet pan here that I'm just going to allow my brown chicken to rest on. The chicken is nice and brown, but again, it is not fully cooked. So I'm going to lower the heat on my pan, adding in just a few more tablespoons of oil if necessary, but I believe I have enough here. Then I'm going to mix in my vegetables, in this case my aromatics, which are ginger, garlic, and the onion. So I have my pan down nice and low. And again, we're sauteing our vegetables here until they're translucent. This is just to allow them the opportunity to release their fragrance. We're going to also add in a little crushed red pepper. To my dish, I've added about a half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper. If you can see what's inside of my pot, the brown bits that formed on the bottom after we browned our chicken is now starting to release from the moisture in our aromatics, causing that to release from the pan. When we add in the rest of our liquid, they will all release, and all of that flavor will be incorporated into our stew. The process of sauteing your aromatics for this stew will only take approximately 3 to 5 minutes. Unlike yesterday's other stew that we made where we used the peppers in them, that took a little bit longer, just simply because peppers are more dense and it takes a lot longer to sweat them down and get them to release their fragrances. Okay, so now that our onions and our garlic are ready, we want to add in our tomatoes. Again, I am using crushed tomatoes, fire roasted. You can choose to use fresh tomatoes if you'd like, or anything else, but I am using crushed. On the back pot here, you see I have my chicken stock simmering, and so I want to add that in when I'm finished. I'm going to add a portion of my chicken stock, not all 6 cups of it that I'm going to use. I'm going to add in about 3 to 4 now, and then I'll add in the rest later. So in will go my, checking my heat, making sure it's on low, adding in my tomatoes. This is a 28-ounce can, which is sufficient. It's just slightly over 2 cups. And as you can see here, more and more of those bits on the bottom have released from my pan, because as we add in our liquid, the moisture is causing them to release. Get that stirred in. Now I'm going to add in 4 of our cups of our chicken stock. going to bring this back up to a simmer, and then I'm going to add back in my chicken. In addition to that chicken, I'm also going to add in my cubed sweet potatoes that I have waiting on the other side. So we're just going to let this come back up to a simmer. Be careful to not boil your stew too quickly, or otherwise it can change the flavor. Oh, no. Okay, now that our sauce is back up to a simmer, I'm going to go ahead and add in my sweet potatoes. And I'm going to add in my chicken, making sure that I've got my sweet potatoes all nestled into my broth. Here's my chicken. I'm gonna make sure we get all of our juices that might have been released while their chicken was resting on the pan back in. Okay, and now we're gonna allow this to simmer and cook uncovered for 1 hour. You might be saying to yourself, Chef, this was peanut stew. Where's the peanuts? You haven't added them. So, actually, what we have in the back pot here is the remaining 2 cups of broth that we still need to add to our stew, along with 1 cup of natural peanut butter. We're using natural peanut butter, which is peanut butter that has no added sugar or salt to it. Whisking that together, and then that will go in with the rest of our stew and continue to simmer for 1 hour. All right? You can see. You really want to make sure that you get it whisked in here well to break up any lumps of peanut butter that you might have. You don't want to leave those lumps to settle in your stew. You want to make sure it's really fully incorporated. Many West African dishes, as well as many dishes in Africa in general, are a high vegetarian diet. This one has been added and amplified by using chicken, but you can of course make it vegetarian by substituting the chicken for additional legumes such as black-eyed peas or things like that. You can also use tofu if you wanted to. I'm going to add my broth and my peanuts, butter into our mixture. And this is going to just simmer in good, right? You notice all of our broth has almost fully covered all of our chicken. This will give the chicken the opportunity to continue to cook through, and we want to cook it for that hour until the chicken starts to fall off the bone. If it takes a little bit longer, of course, you know, the longer you allow a stew to rest and cook, then the more flavorful it becomes. However, you don't want to cook this stew for more than 3 hours, especially if you're going to be cooking it on the stove top. Okay, it's been approximately 1 hour since our stew has been simmering. Now we're going to go ahead and remove our chicken from our stew. It's fully cooked and it's ready to be removed. So it's very tender and we're going to take it off at this point. So all of my chicken now has been removed from my sauce. I'm going to go ahead and season my sauce with salt and pepper, using about a tablespoon of salt to start with. I'm also going to add in some black pepper. Whisk this into our sauce here. And remember, like I talked to you the other day about, a good cook always tastes their food. It's important that you taste it along the way, because if you don't, you won't know how your food is going to taste for the rest of your guests. So here we want to taste it, making sure we have enough spice, enough seasoning, enough salt, enough pepper. You can slightly undersalt it if you'd like, so that way, if a guest is salt sensitive or has, you know, some type of diet restrictions, you're not overwhelming them with your taste and seasoning. But if you know the group of people you're serving for, you want to season it to taste. Then I'm going to go ahead and turn up my heat a little bit, because I would like to thicken my stew just a little bit more, so I don't overcook my chicken. That's why I've removed it. Now I'm going to thicken it just a bit, allowing it to reduce, and then I'll place my chicken back in and it's ready to be served. Okay, you can see here now our stew is starting to bubble and boil a little bit more. With our chicken removed, I'm just going to allow it to reduce, as I said before, and then I'm going to place my chicken back into the stew. If we were serving this family style, I will use a large bowl, placing my chicken in the bowl first, and then pouring my stew stock on top of it, garnishing it with a little cilantro, and serving it with traditionally fufu, or if you didn't want to try fufu, you could use French bread or something like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation on West African peanut stew. Up next, you'll see plating and presentation.